Thank you for joining us in our annual winter roundtable in Las Vegas. I've said this as we've been doing foundation that you can't be the Western Caucus without having trouble with the West. It takes obviously a lot of land and a lot of issues. Intersects with communities all across the West and rural America. So with that, we're just pleased and want to thank San Manuel Drive for hosting us today. It's great to be here. Everyone found out that you guys are taking over the Palms Casino. We've had a real life coming back here, just TV show. Wanted to come over here at an opportunity to show off the space. And we have a conversation. Issues important to the travel of America. So with that, I'm going to go over to Samantha.
Yes. Hello. I'm Stilwell. I work for CNML Division of Paiutes in the Intergovernmental Affairs Department. So I'm actually set up California Vikki, but we're really happy to have you here. Thank you so much for joining on our wonderful tour. Hope you guys were able to learn a lot about the property. And it's just been wonderful to have the tribe be able to expand outside of just the gaming that's on the reservation, but to gaming in Vegas. So I would love to turn it over to Councilmember.
Yeah, me, I'm doing the Marc Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. My name is Marc. I serve on the Tribal Council for Pechanga. We're about an hour north of San Diego, Southern California, in the southwest area of Riverside County. It is a pleasure to be here, and it's unfortunate we don't have more tribal leadership, but we have some very fine folks here from Indian country that serve Indian country very well. It's a pleasure to be here in a property owned by a tribe, one of our neighbors, close friends and allies. It's a little bit to the north. We've done a lot of business together, but somewhere also. I hope you enjoy their property, and I don't happen our own properties. So Sean is not looking to this expand. But it's an interesting time for sure for tribes. And there's some very important issues that align very well with the Republican Party, and we're hoping to have the ability to push some policy in this administration in the next 2 years in particular. And they mostly revolve around parity. Tribal government parity, and a couple issues. One particular issue is tribal tax policy. Now, tribes don't have the ability to take advantage of certain tax policies because when the tax policy was written, tribes weren't really considered as governmental entities. So what happens in the IRS looks at certain provisions. If the tribe is not specifically called out as being exempt or having the ability to do certain things, we're not allowed to. So there's some policies which look at tax-exempt bond for commercial enterprises is one. Tribes can get a tax-exempt bond to build a golf course or do an economic enterprise like the city of San Diego, who owns Torrey Hines, which is a beautiful golf course to get in there, and the convention centers and likewise. The other issue of parity is in labor policy, labor law. Tribes are not exempt from the labor rules like other federal governments. And as many of you may or may not know, our PE enterprises provide essential funds to run our governments. So things like healthcare, education, cultural preservation, language preservation, those are all essential government entities or activities that we do, and having the ability for a union to strike and shut our operations down really is not a business issue. It's really a tribal government, and it doesn't allow us to continue to supply some essential government functions. So I won't take up all the time. I'm not the leader of the Tribal Council of Pechanga. We have a very eloquent Chairman, Marc is the president of the CAI, and he's very good at this stuff. But I love being here for Republican and Western Caucus issues. I have vast experience in water, selling up water rights, which I sit on a lot of boards in the area for water rights. And I know being here in Las Vegas, some of you have heard of it to the Crewa. Colorado River Water Users Association, which handles the water issues on the Colorado. But I think I'll turn it back over to Sam, and thank you for having me.
So, two of the items that Sam and Marc has really been struggling with, and it may come as no surprise, the agency that is behind this, the U.S. Forest Service, has been causing quite a bit of an issue. And I hear the sighs from around here. So thank you for the solidarity. But unfortunately, Sam and Wall is landlocked. They're in a really unique position where the reservation is. So behind the reservation is U.S. Forest Service. In front, we're surrounded by two cities. So there's really nowhere for the tribe to go. Unfortunately, one of the big issues with being right next to Forest Service land is fire. Wildfire is a huge, huge threat to the tribe and to everything on the reservation and surrounding cities as well. So Sam and Law has been in the process of trying to do a land swap with the U.S. Forest Service. It's a hearing loss since 2017, a simple land swap where Forest Service identified land that they wanted, that they felt was the best land for them, and it is taking on 7 years. And one of the biggest issues is that we have hired consultants for them to be able to get all these reports from that they're asking us for, and they are questioning us on cultural reports, lands that is in the tribe's ancestral territory, and they are questioning our own reports on nature. So that's a huge issue for us. It should not take this long to do a simple land swap, especially when we're providing them with the staff to be able to do it. The other huge issue that Sam and Law is facing is in regards to water. And so there is property that the tribe owns that is right next to U.S. Forest Service land. It's historically and culturally significant to the tribe. There is essential government services located on that piece of property. We actually have a fire station, one of the 3 that Sam and Law has, because again, wildfire mitigation is a huge issue. We have over 800 goats that roam the surrounding land to do, all that mitigation. So with the water issue, there are a lot of lawsuits going on. And so pipelines that were not owned by the tribe, but owned by another entity that were on U.S. Forest Service land that were providing water to the property that Sam and Law owns. The Forest Service decided that they were no longer going to renew that special use permit for the water company that was bottling out water. Unfortunately, that is the way that Sam and Law gets access to the water on that property. And it wasn't until we had multiple visits with USDA administration, we had Congressman Overdulty write a letter, and we started to see a little bit of movement. We were told U.S. Forest Service was actually going to completely shut off water to that entire property, which feeds into some of our fire hydrants that are on that property. Again, huge issue for wildfire, for not having water in our fire hydrants. And that serves the whole county too. Anybody along that route would have access to those fire hydrants. So it wasn't until we started to get a little bit, more vocal about our issues and go to DC and really start, pounding on the door that we were getting some answers. But we're told January 15th, our water will be shut off, and we have no recourse because administratively, U.S. Forest Service locally does not want to provide us with the access or want to provide us with an extension. The tribe, like I said, more than happy to connect to municipal water, but obviously will be in the millions of dollars and will take many years to get that done. So we're really saddled with this deadline of 15. So that's moving up over our heads. So thank you for hearing and feeling my struggles with U.S. Forest Service.
Wow. I think the Western Caucus has to say on many issues.
Good, I'm glad.
So thank you. We've been joined by Aurene, Marc with the Pechanga. Comments?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aurene. I'm with Stilwell Consulting here, represent Pechanga and Navigators, and I don't really feel comfortable speaking on their issues when I have a Councilmember here. So, not to totally put them on the spot, but oh, you did already?
So you could.
So I get to. Sorry, I was anxious to be here. So, well, I work with Pechanga, and they have a number of issues. I think they're of interest to the Western Caucus. One of the things we've done in the past, and we're looking at doing moving forward, is we sought and secured our transfer of Bureau of Land Management lands to the tribe about almost 20 years ago. And this is a common issue actually for a lot of tribes, particularly in the West, California, Mexico, where the Bureau of Land Management has these random parcels of land that are varying sizes, anywhere from 5 to 500,000 acres. And in a lot of cases, they don't really do anything with them, right? They're too far away from the other land, or they're just not really easily accessed. But they are close to tribal reservations or Indian lands, and the tribes are contiguous in a lot of cases. And tribes are interested in managing, particularly in California, the forest fire mitigation for that type of work. And they can also just use them for other governmental purposes that might serve their needs. And so the process that's laid out there is no process. If they go through the disposal process under FLIPMA, it can take decades, right? It just takes forever, and they might never actually get to the point where they acquire land. But if they do, then they have to turn around and go through another federal process to put it into trust and make it part of their reservation. And so what they do, the fastest way to do it is to go to Congress and get it active Congress. So they've done this successfully in the past. There are some parcels that are next to their reservation, continuous to the classifieds that we're going to be seeking moving forward. And I guess my plug would be, there has to be an easier way to do this than to go to Congress every time there's a parcel of land that's contiguous to a reservation for a tribe to be able to acquire it. Like an administrative process. But but that's one of the things that we've been looking at on updates.
Thank you. Well, we can follow up some questions when we get through the panel for sure. Also, John Tahsuda is here with us. I've known him for many years, and he spent the first part of the first Trump administration at Department of Interior as counselor to the secretary, really representing Indian country at that department there, as among other things. So, John, turned out to be.
Thanks, Daryl. Thanks for having me. Yes, like a lot of you folks, that's true. Probably very excited to turn the page in a few days and have an administration that understands the West. And so I was very fortunate where I worked the first Trump administration with, I worked very closely with Secretary Vikki and Secretary Pechanga, both who are Westerners and understand the needs of the Western United States. And so that was a great experience. Both of them also have a long history of working on Indian affairs of tribal issues. And so it was also a great time to work with them on those issues there. Counter to what you might believe if you paid attention to sort of popular media or whatever, the Trump administration was very friendly to tribal interests. And I would say, in a sort of an unsophisticated view for folks all the way to the White House who didn't have a long history with Indian affairs, but they considered the part of the community of the United States that had been overlooked for a long time, that the federal bureaucracy had treated poorly. And so we're very interested in what they could do to change that dynamic. And so wish we would have had 8 years right off the bat, but we had another 4 years, because if I would put in place a number of things that would be of great benefit to the tribes and the benefit, as it often does, not just the tribes themselves, but the folks that live around them, the Western communities that live around them. Things like getting EPA out of the hair of the tribes. Samantha mentioned how you have a federal agency trying to overrule the tribe on matters that are within their expertise. Seems kind of silly, but that happens all the time. And so that's sort of like a theme running through a lot of the efforts that we made before, and I have some confidence that we'll get back moving in that direction again. Again, top of the list, EPA being one of those, but also, I was talking earlier about the Good Neighbor Policy, USDA, and I think that sort of theme is also something that can be imported into a lot of other agencies that deal with Western communities, in particular tribal communities. Right, ties back to the forest fires too. But one of the first trips I took with Secretary Vikki, who went for his house in Whitefish over to meet with the Blackfeet Nation, so you go pass over the mountains. And there's a particularly illustrated space there in which you have U.S. forests, you have Department of Interior, BLM and other lands, actually Park Service, Park Service, and lands owned by the tribe. And you come over this pass and you can see the woods, the trees right there, and illustrative of who takes care of forest the best. You had U.S. Forest Service, which was just burnt down to the ground, totally burnt. You had the Interior, which is done a little bit better, but still marked completely with burned out areas, et cetera, bad forestry management, et cetera. And then when you get to the tribal part of the land, it's green. It looks like a prehistoric forest. It's healthy, it's growing. And so, Ryan turned to me and said, "This is why we need the tribes to take care of our forests," right? So I think those kind of themes will be running through us through policy again. I'm very hopeful anyways that will be in the background for a lot of the things that we do. I'm not sure what you want us to cover, Gerald. It's probably easier to answer questions. I know that, and I apologize to my client, the chief of the Osage Nation, had hoped to be here, but he couldn't make it. But they have similar issues to a lot of Western folks there. If you don't know, Osage Nation is in Oklahoma, so they have a historic oil and gas field. In fact, a few years ago, they celebrated the 150th year of the establishment of their reservation and about 120 years of oil and gas exploration on their reservation. And so they have a large background in that. And every headache that you could imagine that people deal with oil and gas with the federal government, they have that probably tenfold, because they are completely under the thumb of the federal government on that front. And so those issues, I know that Chief Sander is hopeful will get some more attention. They basically languished for 4 years, and hoping that they'll be, again, in the areas of environmental EPA and other folks that are poking their heads in, they're working moving in the other direction on that.
Perfect. Thanks, John. And I'd like to introduce Mike Ampers, the former staff director for the Affairs Committee, now above our rules. So, Mike.
John. All right. How was your tour earlier today? Is it pretty good? All right. Mike Andrews, good to be with you. I was telling Daryl last night over beverage, I think this is year 10 for me, joining you all here in sunny Las Vegas. And it makes a whole lot of sense that when you talk about Western Caucus, you talk about tribes. So here is your education announcement of the day by a show of hands. There's 574 federally recognized tribes. Okay. What percent of those tribal nations live west of the Mississippi? West of the Mississippi. So we'll start the bidding at 50%. Let me see a show of hands that think that half of those 575 live west of the Mississippi. For more. How about 60%? Okay. What? 70%. Okay. 75%. Let me see those hands. All right. If you had 75% on your card, you are the winner. So I want you to think about that. 75% of our federally recognized tribes, and I'll be fair, where they're living now. I don't want to get in trouble. Some of them were a while in the east, and then they made their way for different reasons. But those tribes, and they're all unique, there are things that bind them all. Land, right? The bureaucracy that tribes have to go through to develop their land is like no other. And it is sinister of how much the federal government is in tribal lives. The second is water. And you hear a lot about water settlements and how important it is. I work for a tribe that's about 90 miles north called the Moapa Band Paiutes. They're blessed. They have a ton of water. They're having trouble getting it out because they need Department of Interior to do their job. The third, of course, is self-determination, as letting the tribes be who they are. And I appreciate the councilman talking about the Tribal Labor Sovereignty Act. So the staffers here in the room, here's a public service announcement for y'all. It could be a good opportunity to get that bill across. What that is, it's a real simple fix. It lets tribes decide whether or not they want to unionize. That's it. Geez, what a novel option. Let the tribes decide whether or not they want to have a union or not. It shouldn't be the federal government. It shouldn't be the National Labor Review Board. It should be the sovereignty of the tribe to make that determination. And the second is, to the tax question earlier, is this. And I know some of you are working on the budget reconciliation. And so when we get to the tribal tax portion, which we're working on, let's eliminate the essential government function test. Let me tell you what will happen when we do that. One, you will immediately allow the tribes up to $1 billion in investment opportunities for people to come in and invest in the tribe. They're not just going to be limited to what an essential government function test is. Do we all know what an essential government function test is? Right. Because Kevin does, but it depends, right? You got somebody in Washington, D.C., not you all, but somebody else in the executive branch making that decision for the tribes. And so if we do nothing else in this new majority, this new Republican majority, I would say let's try to get those two across the finish line. We got to get this opportunity. Real quick, and I'll pivot. So the Moapa Band, I mentioned the water that they have, which is great. The other thing, and it's just a factor in northern Las Vegas, you get plenty of what? Sun. And they have 3 of the largest solar projects in the United States. And it's amazing to see how they are able to tap into that energy corridor and sell their energy. But the town amount of work that they need to do to get that out, again, is criminal. The multiple permits that sit on somebody's desk, the red tape it takes to exchange energy between the federal government, the state, and back to the tribe. And so my shield back to you all is this. It's a fantastic opportunity to cut down bureaucracy. I'm super excited about the interior nominee, Doug Burgum, a North Dakotan. He knows Indian country well. One of the things that he has told is he wants to put the power back to the tribes and have them handle their land is how they want to. There's not going to be a one side, there's not going to be this renewal or clean energy I think we all support clean energy, but that's not the only ticket in town. That's not the only ticket in town. Some tribes are blessed sitting on coal. Some tribes are blessed sitting on geothermal. Some tribes are blessed on wind. Some are even on extraction. Let the tribes determine what they want to do. And I think this is a great opportunity with this administration, with that focus to get done. All right?
Thanks, Mike. And I want to bring up Kevin Eastman. Oh, yes. Real quick, my Morongo tribe was going to be here and not stable right yet. And if not, Kevin, you get a phone for that book. We talked about them. And there's some. Happy to, I think. Okay. We said we got a microphone, no preparation. With East tonight, I do prefer which I work with for the Morongo and Mission Indians. They're located near Palm Springs. They share many of the concerns that you've heard here from the other panelists. Tax parity is something that they've been working on a great deal. I'm not sure, Chris, you know that as an example, but aside from tax exempt bonding or not having access to long-term housing tax credits, adoptions conducted through tribal courts aren't eligible for the adoption tax credits available to every other adoptive family in the United States. So they're working to fix that right now. We're also very concerned about something called the Indian Child Welfare Act, which helps enable adoptions of Indian children, orphan Indian children, by members of that tribe or another nearby tribes that help continue their culture. And those children now will grow up in an environment where they have people telling about their family's background and family's history. But the Morongo tribe also has wildfire issues. They also have trespass issues, as any tribe or other large landowner probably does. I'm sure many of you, if your staff and your districts have encountered the local campus cultivation problems that's occurred out at Morongo. We've had fire issues, or something that I think will resonate for probably most of the people in this room is that the tribe's reservation is directly adjacent to a national monument, which the tribe did not have a great role of designating, so that's created some management, fire issues at the reservations. But, all in all, I just echo everything the other panelists here said today. Tribes are generally by their nature entrepreneurial. They want to be self-reliant. They want to take care of their membership. They do the best they can with the resources that they have to provide education, housing, and health care to their membership. But too frequently, the federal government is more restrictive on tribes than they are to other government entities or other communities. So that's something that all of us have been working to address. Dozens of different categories, for years and years. I'm excited about the incoming administration. We just heard from Mike, the governor, Secretary Designee. It's really well thought of by tribes in his state. I know the Eastside tribal members were in his administration up there. So we're excited to have someone who understands these issues and is a bit more responsive to tribes in the current administration. Thanks, Kevin. And I will kick off with a couple questions here. You mentioned the cannabis growing on tribal lands. Tribal governments have the issue with the illegal drugs on the reservations and the drug trafficking. How can the federal government help the U.S. government kind of help tribes in dealing with drug problems on tribal land? That's very, really big stuff. But you don't get sorry. Okay.
Well, there are a couple of ways. Number one, California is what's called a public law 280 state. There are a number of states across the West, and that means that the state and local governments have public safety jurisdiction over tribal lands. Functionally, that means that tribes in PL 280 states receive little to no money for their own public safety or law enforcement agencies, so they're reliant on the local county sheriff's office, the state attorney general, county DA, people of that nature to help enforce public safety on their land. That's all well and good. Many of the tribes I work for have great relationships with their local law enforcement. But that also means that local law enforcement is responsible frequently for large land areas that they don't know too well because they aren't out there frequently. And it also means that, a sheriff's deputy may not be well versed on where he has jurisdiction, where he doesn't have jurisdiction, which crimes he has jurisdiction over, which he doesn't. And that can cause them to be reluctant to go respond to incidents on tribal land. Putting the Forest Service, there are federal funds available to clean up illegal cultivation and related debris, chemicals that you might find out in national forests, thanks in part to something that Marc and Doug Wanoff have been working on for years. There isn't funding of the same nature available to tribes, even though their venue is under federal jurisdiction. If they go out and discover an illegal cannabis growth and find some 55-gallon drums of chemicals that are illegal in the U.S., but made in Mexico and arrived here somehow, they're toxic to humans and everything else. They have to figure out how to rehabilitate that area and deal with its chemicals themselves. They have to fund that themselves. They probably don't have expertise in dealing with chemicals like that or as they correct transport. So probably go on about that all day, but I hope that answers the question. Others?
Yeah, so Pechanga's not specifically that close to the border with Mexico, but we have experienced some issues over the years, not so much recently, but I think a lot of it has to do with developing a great relationship with your local law enforcement. In this case, it's our sheriff department in Riverside County. Sheriff Chad Bianco has been a great partner in this. Casinos can attract certain characters, right? Cash business, and we've been able to install a facial recognition software so we can track. I know it seems kind of creepy, big brother, but we've identified several criminals, high-level criminals that were apprehended on our SEBA floor, and that wouldn't have been able to take place unless we had a great relationship with that. So it kind of goes down to what was mentioned earlier. Public Law 280 is an unfunded mandate, and the sheriff is required to respond for criminal activity on reservations. And California has 109 reservations, so it's the most in the country, and it's very diverse. And some tribes are rural; and they don't have the opportunity to have that kind of sophistication. They just are very, very remote. But I think one of the things that we encourage tribes to do is have a good relationship with law enforcement. So if there is an issue, it can be addressed. And tribes don't want this kind of activity on their reservations. They are small communities. They need support, need help generally, and that includes us as well. We're fortunate to be a closed reservation, not like Morongo. Seminole is pretty closed, but a majority of reservations across the state and the country are open. Federal roads transverse to them, so it's hard to keep, bad actors off your reservation. So we are unique in that way, but yeah, that's kind of how we would handle that.
So Councilman Lugo was talking about what the closed reservation, and the rural reservations is, he was talking about the unfunded mandate. And so what happens on a lot of reservations is there is a gap in law enforcement because either the county doesn't have jurisdiction over the tribe, or sometimes if they do, say in counties, they just won't go there because it's remote or because it's a vast area and they're not familiar with it. This leaves a gap in actual law enforcement that drug traffickers are taking advantage of. And so they're finding these areas where there's no enforcement, and they're using them as kind of a jumping off point for their operations. And so that's why sometimes you're hearing about drug trafficking through Indian country. I think for us, I'm not talking for everybody, but a resolution to that has to be either finding a way to fund law enforcement, state and local that would be operating in those areas, or to find a way for tribes to be able to get funding to do that themselves. Especially for the rural tribes that don't have a lot of money. But that is really where a lot of issues, rural, tribal, Western, kind of converge, and that's a problem area that needs to be addressed.
Oh, so I think there's a systemic problem with law enforcement in the Indian country. It became very evident to me early on, like, which is important. Yeah, so I'm from Oklahoma and lives most of the West areas. And it's sort of well known and accepted fact that law enforcement is just very inadequate, maybe a mild way to put it, on most of Western reservations. To be large, like rural areas, very sparsely populated, so it's a challenge in general. But when I got to the department in 2017, I found out that the Office of Justice Services, which is the BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs law enforcement arm, had been basically starved for 8 years, from the end of the Bush administration through the beginning of the first Trump administration. That law enforcement arm, which is responsible for law enforcement, they're the primary law enforcement agency for an Indian country. They had essentially been starved. And so we did what we could in 4 years. There's a lot more to be done. And a lot of things that we started got dropped. We had a very active drug interdiction task force, which worked across all the bureaus at Interior and with Forest Service and other agencies and with tribal law enforcement officers. Was hugely successful. That got dropped immediately in 2020, 2021, as soon as our administration came in. So there are things to do, but there are also a lot of improvements, and I will preach to you, sort of as Mike did for his staffers out there. I'm hopeful that there will, in some of the early budget requests coming from the incoming administration, that there will be efforts to plus up law enforcement in Indian country. And some of those are very basic, and things that shocked me when I got to the Interior the first time around. BIA law enforcement officers are paid substantially less than other Interior law enforcement officers. So Forest Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Rangers are paid more than a BIA law enforcement officer who's boots on the ground dealing with drug deal. Unlike the Fish and Wildlife guy who's probably trying to keep somebody throwing a line in a creek he's not supposed to. Paid pretty substantially less. So things like that, I'm hopeful can be addressed. And when those come, it would be great to have the support of your bosses from the West to understand that that's a systemic problem and a very basic thing that needs to be taken care of in as soon as possible.
She's talk about a subject we could probably go all day on, but let's just do simple math since I went to one of them public education schools. One, where does fentanyl come from? Mexico, right? Through China. Heroin, right? Most methamphetamines, it's all coming through the southwest border. It's all being imported. Human trafficking, smuggling. How about we start where we know where the drug traffickers are getting their product from? I think once we start with that common sense approach of more border security, I think on the domestic side in the U.S., you will see a decrease. So let's start with that as a strategy, a very simple strategy of more enforcement, more apprehensions, route denial, and then we can focus on the recovery aspect and of course our tribal communities. Because the tribal communities, I gotta tell you, they have drug cartels working out of their reservations. Truth to fact, if anybody paid attention to a springtime Indian Affairs committee that they had last year, kudos to Chairman Schatz for hosting it. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty. They painted a pretty grim picture of the high fentanyl death rates that tribes disproportionately have more than non-natives. That's right. In North Dakota, the incoming Secretary of Interior is safe, and he knows this issue live and well of how bad fentanyl kills, and we know where it's coming from. So then we got to ask, okay, if we start apprehending more on the border, what about what we have in the U.S.? What do we have on the reservations? And John's right. You know, BIA law enforcement is the first law enforcement that most tribes utilize for the criminality. But they're not alone. There is a government-to-government relationship. That's where you all come in. The Drug Enforcement Administration, yes, they need to show up on reservations. And what's the other one? FBI? They need to step up and do their job. But they can't all do it themselves. And my last selling point, as you heard, is this. As you start looking at budget resources to ensure that tribes have that sufficient resources to provide public safety, is we have to start looking at a smarter way to give BIA more assets. But it also needs to be a ground-up approach. And let me explain. The three largest law enforcement agencies, most of them are in the Department of Justice, but we can take two of those, DEA and FBI. They report directly to the Attorney General. It makes sense. That's their boss. ICE, they report to the Secretary of Homeland Security, Commandant of the Coast Guard. Any Coasties in here? That's all right. You can't all be like me. Reports to Secretary of Homeland Security. Who do you think the director of the Bureau of Indian Affairs Law Enforcement reports to? Anybody? Daryl will buy you a drink of your choice if you can tell me that. Without the paid experts that are in certain tables that know this answer. But for the rest of y'all, who does Director of OJS report to? Interior. It's in Interior. I'll go and tell you, I know you're baiting breath here. The Director of BIA. Okay. Who does the Director of BIA report to? The Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs. Who's the Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs report to? The Deputy Assistant Secretary of Interior. And who's the Deputy Assistant Secretary report to? The Secretary. You see where we're getting at here. It's like before anything gets up, it has to go through 6 layers of common sense. Why is that? So if you don't like that, y'all have an opportunity to put pen to paper and change what I would say is a common sense organizational structure to get their law enforcement back on track with everybody else.
Cool.
The next is for kind of on behalf of the staff. It's like, those tribe producers, those are tribal issues. What is the best way to approach and work with the Department of the Interior on behalf of tribes? I believe that's all their decisions, tribal decisions.
I may suspect it depends on the administration, but with the incoming administration, assuming it will be somewhat similar to the way the first Trump administration was. Your members at the Great Forks, the Office of Legislative Affairs at the department was very active, particularly, again, you might even say we had a Western bias. But pay very close attention to what your members said, the issues that you raised. So I think the same thing will be there. Don't be afraid. I know your bosses aren't afraid to call a secretary directly, but for you guys, the staff work closely with the Legislative Affairs Office at Interior. And those are mostly political folks, so they'll be receptive to you, unlike the last few years. So that would be the first step I would say.
Well, I would say, of course, keep your membership on the Boston Caucus.
I can speak for the previous, the Trump 1.0. Western Caucus hosted their monthly coffees, and I believe they invited every secretary to show up with their staff, right? I mean, let's be clear, these are large staffs, these are large departments, and guess what? It's personality driven, okay? I mean, it's face-to-face. Email is okay, but sometimes it does not really describe what you're asking and what you want. And for the folks that are working in the administration, their bandwidth is probably like yours, very small, but you need to work hard for your boss to get whatever question they want answered. And so for me, when I was working on the Hill, I took advantage of that. I met with the deputy chiefs, the scheduler, anybody I can get a hold on, face to face, a name with a face. So I was able to then go back and then advocate for my boss that they needed to run down a piece of legislation, if they needed technical assistance, which many of you do on the bills you draft, right? And you want it quickly. It's those relationships that you want to establish, especially now as the administration is rolling people's name out with the transition. And so I would be very attuned, at least for the next 4 to 6 weeks, to start, getting those folks' names, and they'll be public soon. So you need to be at the front of the line, needing something.
As Mike alluded, the Livingston administration expects that we'll be engaging with them a lot. From Western Caucus point of view, from a member point of view, we have member lunches and member-only lunches, and we have, cabinet secretaries that are on a monthly basis for the staff buy camps that we do in the Capitol once a month. House and Senate staff will be bringing inviting back administration officials to be coming in and presenting. We had a great opportunities of having the administration folks come in and talk about priorities at their agencies, but they also heard from staff and everybody what was going on at the staff level and what they were thinking. So that went back to the agencies. So it was a great two-way street that we had with the administration. Trump 1.0, assuming we could be able to do the same. Marc from all his offices dedicated to continuing strengthening the relationship between the Western Caucus and the administration going forward. Do we have any audience questions to start? Josie.
There's been a bill introduced tribal carrying rule, so I just curious those thoughts on that. It passed resources earlier this year. Any ways that they improve that? Congress plus something.
So that bill, it has been introduced in both the House and the Senate. It was referred in the Senate to the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, was passed out, been marked out this way for action. In the House, it was referred to Natural Resources and Judiciary. It passed Natural Resources, no problem. It's sitting at Judiciary, and I think overall with the bill, I don't know that there are any improvements to make. It's a fantastic bill. For those of you that don't know what it is, it's a bill that would allow tribes that operate under a contract with the United States to provide law enforcement on the reservations. It allows those officers to access federal benefits for law enforcement. One of the most serious problems with providing law enforcement is that when a tribe actually does operate their own program, they train officers, they're not allowed by law to provide the same benefits. Because the tax parity that you talked about earlier prevents them from providing those kinds of programs. So this bill would let them offer those benefits, because what happens now is they'll train people and then they go and they work for the county next door, or they'll go to another law enforcement agency that can provide them better benefits. So this bill would resolve that problem for at least contractors. Our problem is that it's sitting at Judiciary and it's not a high priority bill. So for that, but that committee works on big issues. So it's just a matter of, I think, making sure that the chairman and his staff realize that this is an important issue that needs to move forward. So any help you can provide with that would be greatly appreciated, because that's where we're stuck right now.
I'll just add one on that. So Chairman Jordan did say that there was a scoring issue with that. Even though there was no direct impact, the House, you guys have Cutco issues. So it's in the line of Cutco that they're trying to negotiate out, was my last part on that. So you House guys, you're a little bit different from the Senate, but it's okay. Can't all be.
Let me throw a question out to you guys on forestry related. Obviously, Tribe can be a fantastic partner on getting work done on our forest and reducing fire risks, especially across the West because of fire at the But that means a giant maze of bureaucracy to get through contracting and to get actual work done. You guys have a great suggestion for us moving forward. What's a great streamlining, or what's the biggest impediment to us letting tribes work with, especially here we've got friends who, the PGD back there who is, desperately trying to prevent coal fired, or what are your solutions over here who's trying to, give us the tools to put those fires out? What can you do to help us change the landscape? And can you help us avoid some damn lawsuits?
Feels slightly targeted, Marc. I do also have the pleasure of working for the Moortown Range Trip in Northern California, Florida. And what Moortown's found is a creative solution to just the problem Art's talking about. So rather than go through a normal procurement process, you bid on a timber sale or fuel reduction work or any other forest management type of project the forest would like to do, whether that's repairing or building a road, over it, all that sort of thing. They're able to use an authority called Service First to do an interagency agreement between the tribe and the forest. So to illustrate what Service First means, you all are familiar with interagency projects. Let's say that the Forest Service wants to grade a road, Bureau of Land Management has a grader nearby. The Forest Service doesn't put out the request for proposals, go through a bidding process, and select the BLM as the lowest bidder, and then hire them to grade that road. Forest Service will enter into an interagency agreement with the BLM. They'll use the BLM's grader to grade the road, and then they'll reimburse BLM for the cost of that work. Tribes actually have the same ability to do that type of work with a wide array of federal agencies. What Moortown's been doing is using that authority to do work for a number of national forests and national parks in California. So they're able to do work much more rapidly because they don't need to go through that procurement process, or a national forest simply say, we'd like you to do this fuel reduction project, or this road repair project, or this timber harvest project. We have money allocated for it. We're not going to provide it directly to you. We'll do an interagency agreement. You do the work, and then we'll reimburse you for that work as costs incur. So that's one way that tribes work on public lands much faster than most normal processes can allow. I know many of you here worked on good neighbor agreement fakes. That's in the Farm Bill that will be enacted sometime next year. Giving tribes the ability to heat wetlands generated forest management projects, that creates a real incentive for tribes to go out there and do it. Just on another angle I want to point at that illustrates the bureaucracy that Marc was talking about. A number of tribes, California is a great example, but Oregon and elsewhere in the West, they want to go out on their trust rams, do controlled burns to remove brush and limit future fire. Right now, the Bureau of Indian Affairs requires tribes to get the Bureau's approvals go up to control burn. In fact, if they don't get the Bureau's approval to do it, even if we use trained personnel who know how to do a controlled burn, they've got a burn plan, it's not me out there with a book of matches. They need to get the Bureau's approval, and if they don't have it, the Bureau and any other agency in the area, like the Forest Service, will consider that arson. So they'll not only go put it out, but they'll look for someone to arrest as well. We've never been able to learn from the Bureau of Indian Affairs where they get the authority to regulate tribes from doing fuel reduction work on their own land. That's something that can be fixed administratively by the incoming administration. Be a great project for some of your bosses to take up, just to add more bodies out there doing work on public ranks without spending more money, without hiring more personnel because they're already there and you want to.
Anyone else? Okay. Comments, questions? Yes.
Eating worried, so it's been perhaps talk a little bit about the importance of getting those done sooner rather than continuously things pushing them down the road, and how they're going to get more enforcement as told is.
Water settlement. So, you want to try that first? Sure. I can jump in. For congressional votes, I might probably talk to this too, but I think planning ahead. So several times, Congress has set aside a pot of money for Sundance, and that's the biggest hurdle, right? It's just the cost of once you've got a settlement and trying to scramble together to get over the cost, but into the budget. But if you've got a fund set aside for that, then that makes that part of it easier. It also and so I think what you're getting at, one of the points you're getting at, is these things drag out, and the cost of using this infrastructure needed to implement, right? The cost of that skyrockets in a few years. So all these things would pile on, so that a settlement that may have been $100 million today is in 5 years just going to be 500 million, right? So if you have a fund set aside, also you can, one, get things up faster, but two, you can kind of strong arm parties too and say, well, this is all you're getting. I'm sorry, if your infrastructure is not where you want it to be, you still got to fit that, then figure out some way to get more infrastructure later. But I think, in my experience, those are the two sort of ways that are the main way is having your funds set aside. That way you can keep costs down time-wise and keep costs down with price than a selling that.
So these settlements take decades generally. Our tribe joined a lawsuit to settle a water settlement rights in 1974, the year I was born. So the water settlement just passed 8 years ago. So over that amount of time, it took, not having funding and looking to the federal government for resources for water hydrology, for legal review. It just took quite a bit of time, but really it started getting more fast-tracked around 2006, where we hired a firm that was really good at getting settlements done. They had multiple settlements under their belt, but it really took getting relationships with the municipalities or local water municipality, metropolitan water agencies, a major player in Southern California, across California, and getting them educated on our issues. And that's kind of the biggest problem, that getting folks educated on our issues, why we need certain amounts of water, what is going to be used for the water we use for. So this takes a lot of time. And then once the settlement was funded in 2016, it took 4 years to fund it from Congress. It took 3 different appropriations. And by that time, the escalating costs, the indexing went up by 40% at that point. So that's the difficult thing. If you really look at, and we were fortunate to be close to infrastructure. There's tribes that are remote and, Blackfeet, and I know Two Rivers working on mine, California. But you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars to build infrastructure to get that to them. So it's a major difficulty, and these tribes support major economies in their local areas, and they need that assurity that they're going to have water for the next generations of people.
settlements because of it. So I'm working on a couple of water settlements right now, actually, and I can't tell you how broken that process is. I think one thing I think it's important for staff to understand that is they call them Indian water settlements, but they're actually community water settlements because what they do is they resolve rights for everyone in the community and then they provide water to those communities. And the problem is that they are getting exponentially more expensive because, as I think Chairman Betts has said, they're not making more water. So everybody's fighting for that same amount of water and it's costing more and more, the actual water, right? But to everyone else's point, the inflation has been dramatic, especially in the past 10 years with COVID and then the ensuing inflation. And so the water settlements you're seeing are going to be costing hundreds, they're in the billions now. And so recognizing, one, that there are costs and planning for it, but also that they have to be moved along quickly because the other thing happens off the back end is you have to get your final judgment declared before monies can be released. And in some cases, that the client I'm working with now is 6 years. And then they got to do the environmental work, which took another 3 years, and then they hit COVID. So they had a 2010 water settlement, and they're 2024, and the cost has gone up sixfold. So, sooner is better, finding is better, more money is better.
I used to laugh at that question, Councilman. I know it took forever and a day for years to go, but when I was on the Hill, I used to tell tribes, they're like, what do I gonna need to do to get my water settlement? I'm like, move to Montana. I'm not kidding. Anybody here from CHHE? Right? How long did it take for you to get your settlement and your congressional action done? Answer, 36 months. 36 months. So not very long. Same thing with the Crow, about the same time. All the Montana water settlements move pretty expeditiously. Now that's how an anomaly. It's not like what most water settlements go through. And yeah, having worked on 12 or more, one's on the Gill, and then now sitting on this side, it's an archaic process. There's no doubt about it. A great opportunity for this new administration to come in and say, why do we need 43 steps on a simple settlement list? How much is the settlement worth? So you got to bring the lawyers in and then find out what is actually being settled. Heck, I used to call it the non-Indian water settlement because, quite frankly, it was all the downstream and upstream users that were living off the backs of the tribe's water. And I get the good neighbor scenario, and especially if the state is chipping in money, how do we make this right for everybody? Like, I get that, but you got a lot more hands that are utilizing that water. It's going to get expensive, and that's where you see really the big delta is a simple settlement that, quite frankly, should be $30 or $40 million. And I know in Washington terms, that's somewhat a drop in the bucket. But when the actual retail price with everybody else is like 1.2 billion, and you could look at certain water settlements in Montana that came up to that number, it's a good way to get that to that expensive. And then our friends in the appropriation side are like, what are you doing to us? There's not enough money here in the Bureau of Water Rec to pay for this. So it's definitely a mashing. I wish the process was a little bit more transparent, at least posted. Let's talk about what a settlement actually is. Do you all know there is a settlement team that the Department of Interior has? Has anyone been to that settlement? Right? I have. I've been to a couple. I can tell you, it's like dealing with a plea bargain. Like, different scenarios, different facts. So one size certainly does not fit all. And yeah, I think it does matter where the settlement's coming from. If I have an estate, this is a fourth settlement, and now I'm working with somebody, this is their first settlement, chances are the one with the first settlement is probably giving you a little reduction in price. And that's just me editorializing, having been doing this for a bit. So I agree with you. There needs to be a better transparency and a lot more efficiency in the water settlement process.
Mike, that's one fashionable happy word. I say that, you know. So if governors have some more, that will provoke them. One last question for panels. If anyone's out there wants to close this out. If not, a couple of housekeeping notes. Tomorrow we have our policy breakfast. It is across the street from the Wynn Hotel in the Venetian Palazzo. It's actually Palazzo Casino. So you just take the bridge over, go downstairs, cut to the back. It's called the Groundlets Cafe. We have 3 chairmen and be chairman presenting tomorrow. We have Pamela supply chain issues. Well, Lieutenant Governor Panetta stopping by to welcome us. So hope to see you all there in the morning. Tonight, the reception is again across the street, Palazzo, upstairs at the Flight Club at 7 o'clock. So look forward to seeing you all there. Checking up here. Anything else? If you haven't gotten a credential, please do, so we know, other folks know that you're with your crew at the various activities. So please keep that with you. And if Alyssa sent you an email, please follow up with her spreading tickets. And I really want to thank the San Manuel Tribe for hosting us today. Give a round of applause for them.
Being Southern California and myself originally, happy to sell Southern California, sir. This is awesome.
Vikki, Simmons is here.
Kevin, you want to bring up the chairman just to introduce yourself?
Chairwoman, come on up. Sorry, all right.
Hi everyone, my name is Vikki Simmons. I'm from Moapa and the Paiutes, a small tribe north of here, 50 miles off the beaten path. But we are heavily into solar right now. We have 3 plants on our land, 2 adjacent, 1 we're coming. And so we look for continual employment for our tribe and surrounding people in this area. It's like changing jobs, the wages are good. And so we hope that the red tape involved with getting these projects done, that somehow we help with that. And so that's all we're ready to say right now. No questions.
I was going to ask you how much solar power you guys were putting out.
I think it's almost 1,000 megawatts.
And then don't forget about our battery storage facility.
Yes, there no questions. I made spreadsheets on these, but my hand call right now, but I think it's about 1,000 megawatts, and we do have battery storage and smart battery storage in the pipe coming up with Gemini Solar. So excuse me for not going on my statistics. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And I reminded me, yes, we did go to the Moapa reservation to see their solar facility when it was started. They go, so walk over here. And anyways, okay, we're gonna break here. You have a little bit of time. Buses will load at 1:55. Ask Peter where the buses are, because that's really good. And we have to be rolling by 2. So you free time until then, and then we're gonna head over to the UFC training facility. We should have stuff for guys to shoot. You're all right. So
Make sure you grab a dessert on the way out. Otherwise, I eat everything that doesn't eat. So taste on you to go.
I wanted to introduce this sort of Marjorie the Pumpkin off. Still top status, falls in she absolutely in the med side. I have 2 things for you. 1 underwater, 2
I gave her the email address.
Just